Well, good morning. I hope your Sunday is off to a great start. You know, speaking of starts, after getting off to a pretty rocky start, it looks like spring may actually be settling in, and it feels good. But let's get down to business. This morning we'll be talking with a young man who is making a big impact on his hometown. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
My guest this morning is Tom Delaski. Tom grew up in Munising, left the area for a while, then returned and is making some major investments in his hometown. This morning we'll learn more about Tom and what he's doing and what he has planned for Munising. Tom, welcome to the Ryan Report.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you with us. You know, you are making some big investments and you're doing some big things, and I want to talk more about that. But first, a little bit of history about you. You are a Munising kid, right? Well, from Munising area kid.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up there.
Okay.
Left in '97.
Okay, and you left and joined the Air Force. What kind of service did you provide in the Air Force?
I worked on night vision systems, you know,
Okay.
helicopters and C-130 gunships, things like that.
Did that kind of prepare you for what would come later in your career, or
Technically,
technically?
you know, the electrical engineering schooling helped.
Okay.
It helped a lot.
Now, after you left the Air Force, you stayed in Florida and did some business ventures for a while. Talk to us about that.
You know, it's funny. I was 21 when I
Okay.
got out of the service, and anybody that's been through that process of leaving the military, they tell you to take your time and, you know, get acclimated back to civilian life. And it wasn't a difficult thing for me because I was, you know, I had friends that weren't military in the Panhandle area, and for me it seemed like the day just changed. You know, I woke up and I wasn't in the Air Force anymore, and I took a job with a local fitness center.
Okay.
It was a good social experience for me.
Okay.
You know, I was fresh out of the service, a young guy, and I blinked my eyes and I ended up the general manager of the gym. So that's
And you had no history in that business at all, did you?
No, I didn't. I worked out a lot. You know, I
Okay.
think anybody in the military that's 20 does.
Sure.
But you know, I started to get fascinated with the business side. I grew up with business in my family. I started to get fascinated by it down there. I didn't really think that I was cut out to be a business person, and certainly not in that area. It was a big, you know, to me it was a big town.
Right.
But it just sort of happened.
Was it anything as a kid that would have said this guy's going to be an entrepreneur when he gets older?
If you were to ask me, I would say definitely not.
Okay.
You know, Munising's a small town. I think the time when we grew up, it was get a good career, get a good 401k, get good benefits, put in your time. And man, it just never worked for me.
Okay.
You know, I can appreciate that it does work for people.
Right.
It didn't work for me.
Now, you got involved with a company called Deployed Technologies, and really the company introduced you to your partner, I guess.
Sure. You know, when the things in Florida, I guess when I realized I didn't like hurricanes in
Okay.
Florida, back-to-back hurricanes rocked me in the Panhandle, and it truly kind of was a wake-up call for me. I didn't want to deal with those community-changing events, lifestyle-changing events. I ended up out in Laguna Beach and in
Okay.
Beverly Hills, opening a hotel there. That's where I met Darren Hubbard, and we started the Deployed Technologies adventure, I guess you could say, and it's been going ever since.
Now, you're still the Chief Operating Officer of Deployed Technologies. Give us an idea of what they do. It sounds like a fascinating company.
You know, it's the hardest one for me to explain. It's the least understood, especially locally. The business itself is very straightforward from a technical perspective. We design the cabling, the low voltage, and all of the systems that go into a luxury hotel.
Okay.
So we get handed this empty box, and my team has to design the cabling, all the connectivity. We design the application layer that connects in. We spend a lot of time standing up those systems and training the clients and their staff that are coming on board at different phases. And you know, it's a natural progression once we design it, once we build it, which is a multiple-year process to support it. So we'll find these engagements oftentimes lasting multiple years, you know, 3 to 7 years with a client.
And you must be good at what you do because you continue to attract many clients.
We are good at it. I don't look at it in the sense that it's something that we're really good at. We work very hard at it. It's an ever-changing space. The luxury hospitality space changes constantly, and the technology space changes even more. So it's a very dynamic environment to build a company in and maintain consistency. What I think I'm most proud of with Deployed Technologies is we've kept our core group of people longer than anyone that would be considered a competitor for us, and have had very few life-changing events with our company. We've been very consistent for our clients, and that's what they like the most about us.
And you obviously have formed a strong partnership with your partner, who's not only the CEO of the Deployed Technologies, but a partner in many of your investments here.
Yeah, Darren and I, we sort of formed a natural friendship. I think he recognized when I decided to leave the Florida scenario behind, and I told him, I was very open about it. I'm 26 years old, and I need to make a change. I wanted something different. And again, it goes back to that can't be a 30-year career guy, because it just hit me one night that I wanted to make a change, and I think that he actually appreciated that commitment and willingness to come in and learn something and support him completely in building this business up. And that loyalty and dedication that we showed one another, that foundation is what you still see today.
Okay. We're going to bring it all back to Munising in just a couple of minutes. Okay. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. We're talking this morning with Tom Delasky. Tom is involved with a number of businesses in Munising. We were talking about some of your early career. When did you come back to Munising?
May 8th of 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, my mother had terminal cancer.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And it was one of those things where, in California, we had just gotten a hotel open in Beverly Hills. It was a challenge. It was a lot of work. My introduction, if you will, to what that business was going to look like. And it was just something that called me home. I knew I had to get back to be closer to family and prepare for that. So.
And somewhere along the line, you met Anna, your wife, who was a former anchor here at TV6.
Right. Yeah, she Bloomer put her down on a waterfall story.
Okay.
Down to Munising, and she actually interviewed me for that.
Okay.
And
that was the beginning.
Yeah.
We probably don't have time to talk about all the things you're doing, but let me talk about some of them. You developed the Rome Inn, which is a unique kind of hotel. Tell us about that.
Yeah. A lot like you, I'd done some time on the City Commission in Munising, and there's a lot of talk about empty buildings and people should do this, or the wish someone would do X, Y, or Z. And driving to Hillside Party Store one morning to check in with my staff there, and I look off at this building sitting empty, and I called Darren and I put him on FaceTime, and the next thing you know, I'm sneaking through the hallways of this building, and I said, this could be a phenomenal little boutique, 18, 20 rooms, a little restaurant, and we ended up going for it.
Okay, and this was a former home a very nice home, and then it became a nursing or assisted living facility?
I believe in its final days of operation, it had 3 different licenses in the healthcare side for assisted living and a nursing home.
And then you also opened Tracy's, which I guess we can consider a fine dining establishment.
Sure, fine dining for Munising, which is very casual and a come-as-you-are type place. But Chef Jason, we gave him a lot of free reign, because when I first met him, I knew he was creative. I could feel it, and just turned him loose. And so you get a really unique dining experience at Tracy's.
Now you've got some other things in the works, I know. And by the way, Tracy's was named the best restaurant of the year in Michigan, and by a couple of.
I was surprised to see that, because we're not doing this stuff to become number one.
Okay.
So it was neat to see that happen.
You have a building called the Sam Marks Building. I know you have office space for your Deployed Technologies, but you have some other projects there. An ice cream parlor.
I struggle on I call them rainy day programs, something for kids to do. And we had this space on the north side of the San Marks building that it was just a phenomenal spot for an ice cream parlor.
Okay.
And I'm friends with John Gilbert, and he came down and looked at the space, and I was like, come on, John, this would be cool, and he agreed with me. So again, you blink your eyes and there's ice cream gear going in.
And you also have a place called Whiskey Tom's. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Or you will have.
Yep, that's going to open, I think, in October.
Okay.
It's a liquor license timing thing. We have to transfer the liquor license to it. So until that's done, there's not much point in getting further down the road. It's back to some of our experiences in Manhattan. Worked on a lot of properties in the city where there were very unique lounge environments and speakeasy environments. And I wanted to bring that to Munising, but also bring a classic restaurant alongside it so that there was some service offerings that could tie in with the lounge at the same time. I think people are going to be impressed by it.
Okay. And you've also now purchased the Navigator restaurant, and you have some plans there.
Yeah, we actually, that's what I've been working on for 2 weeks with my construction crew. We've been going full tilt on the renovation. We'll be putting we're calling it A-Burger. I'm thinking that's going to open the first week of June.
Okay.
At the pace we're at.
And just looking at my list here, you have the Cox building with going to turn into a parking lot for a taco truck.
Yeah, there was a challenge for me. I don't like tearing things down, and by that I don't like deleting history.
Right.
But the Cox building, unfortunately, it had gone too far down the rabbit hole of deterioration, and there was no way we could bring it back. So we started looking at options, and there's a parking compression scenario in Munising, and it seemed like the best thing to do was, it's a significant investment for us. It's a lot of money, and to offer free parking, but there is a sort of a sense. There's a sense of service or a duty, if you will, to the community when you develop these properties to make sure that you're being a good steward to what the community itself needs, and parking is something that Munising definitely needs.
Well, we haven't covered the whole list, but you just have a lot of things going. But you're not. Tourism is obviously important, and we want to talk about that later. But you're also there to serve the Munising community as well.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, it's about the community and our friends and neighbors.
Okay. Take one more break. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. Again, we're talking with Tom Delasky from Munising. Tom is involved in a number of business ventures. Talked a little bit about you're preserving the history in Munising, but what else are you trying to? What are you trying to accomplish? What drives Tom Delasky? I guess the average person might say, "Well, I'm going to open a little hotel and make a career of that." That's not what you like to do, apparently.
No, I graduated with 87 kids in my class from Munising High School, and when I moved back, I've moved a lot, lived in multiple states, and I've always been active in any community I've lived in, as far as trying to at least pay attention to the pulse of it. What makes the community live. And Munising, when I first came back, it was the school numbers were down, and certain things. There was the challenges that any small town, any rural town faces. That was where we put our focus, was full-time jobs, salaried positions, medical, dental benefits, paid time off, not working 70, 80 hours a week just because it's summer, treating people decent, showing staff the respect that they want, that they deserve. But I think just building more of a core lifestyle component that's also a company, a development entity. But we've got great staff, and that's the focus, is making sure they're covered.
That must be a key part of your operation. How do you find that staff, and do you find people that are qualified, or do you train them, or is it a combination of the above?
I smile about it because I know it's a challenge. Don't get me wrong, and I love a challenge, and so does my executive team. But our best people I've found on Craigslist, and because we approach things differently. We're not obscure. We're not misleading. But when we're looking for an executive chef, or a sous chef, or a regional general manager for a hospitality portfolio, I don't put it out on Indeed. I don't go to LinkedIn. Very rarely do we try Facebook. We try different channels, and we find talented people. and they stick with us. You know, they come up and they realize that we're just normal people trying to, live a good life in our community, and they plug into that, and it's a really good energy when we find people that work well.
And I know, for example, with your executive chef, initially as part of Tracy's restaurant, now developing the food service at your other establishments as well.
Yeah, and you know what was weird with Jason? He drove up for the interview and back in the same day. It was crazy. To me, I would have done it, but it's a crazy 8-hour day for him, and he came up and we all liked him, and I remember thinking, that kind of dedication was neat. And then he came up and made Tracy's almost look easy, which was interesting to me. It's not easy, but he made it look easy. He carried the stress and the intensity with grace. And, when he walks the floor and he meets the customers, they have very good conversation. He's very, very capable of having that brand conversation and talking to people in a very down-to-earth way about why he's here and why he moved his family here to do what he does. And his ability to scale and grow and take on challenges, I recognized that, and again, just sort of turned him loose.
What, if you had to, in a very short description, what are the keys to your success? Not your success, but the success of your businesses. What do you try to instill in them?
Well, I don't ask any of them to do something I wouldn't do. And I'm not a boss. I like to lead by example, but alongside them. On a construction project, when things have to get very artistic and detailed and creative, I'm typically the one selecting every board, every beam. I'm heavily involved in the creative side, because that's truly what I like. I like to build things and build things differently and creatively. But I treat people decent, and I'll do any of the things that I ask them to do alongside them. And I tell my team every day, we're in this together. So if there's something that's wrong in their world, it's wrong in mine, and we work through it all. We work through it all together.
But you clearly must know what is important in a business. What you have to deliver to your customer.
Happy people.
Happy people.
Because without it, everything's thrown off.
Okay. We have only a minute left. Obviously, Munising is doing well. Does Munising have to do more to grow and capitalize on the opportunities out there?
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people involved that are trying. We've got housing issues to deal with. We need some quality long-term housing. We need nice housing. We need affordable housing. We've got a great city manager in Devin Olson, and he's going to, I know that he's going to stay focused on what the city needs to move forward. And it's a community and municipality thing where private developers, the city government, everybody needs to work together and find solutions, because we have to solve some of the issues to continue to grow.
Well, you're clearly doing your part as far as developing businesses in the Munising area, but hardly any time left. Any big dreams we haven't heard of yet?
Well, you'll hear of them soon.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much for coming in this morning.
Thanks, Don.
Okay, I'll be back with some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. Once again, we're coming up on an annual rite of passage. At high schools around the Upper Peninsula, seniors will soon be receiving their diploma and stepping out to begin the next phase of their life. As this year's class prepares to don their cap and gown, one might be tempted to say that the graduates are set to enter a world that has never been more frightening or more challenging. But history tells us a different story. As I sat down to write this, I thought about comparing the world we know today with the one that graduates were witnessing 50 years ago. The experience of today with terrorism, unthinkable school shootings, and a toxic political atmosphere compared to 1968, when the country was witnessing major unrest and civil disobedience about the Vietnam War, and grieving the assassination of Reverend Martin Luther King and Senator Robert Kennedy. Each era has its fears and challenges, but rather than focus on those serious issues, I decided it might be fun to take a look back on the lighter side, to see what the graduates from 50 years ago might remember. Like the sports fans in Upper Michigan, who were excited about the Green Bay Packers winning Super Bowl II with a victory over the Oakland Raiders. Who knows, it could happen again. 50 years ago, the Detroit Tigers were also the big winners. That year they beat the St. Louis Cardinals to capture the World Series crown. They won't be doing that this year. And what was entertaining people 50 years ago? Their favorite television show was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. A few of the other top-rated shows were Gomer Pyle, Bonanza, the Beverly Hillbillies, and Gunsmoke was still hanging in there. At the movies, people were watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, Planet of the Apes, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and a film that Jane Fonda probably wishes she had never made called Barbarella. In 1968, people were singing along with Otis Redding, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, or This Guy's in Love with You by Herb Alpert, I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye, and the biggest hit of the year, Hey Jude by the Beatles. What else happened that year? Well, Boeing rolled out the 747, McDonald's introduced the Big Mac, gas sold for 34 cents a gallon, and the average car cost just $2,800. The Dow Jones closed at 943. So each graduating class enters a world full of dangers and challenges and opportunities. And as I look back at my own life, I can't believe how much the world, and especially technology, has changed since I wore the cap and gown as a graduate from Ishpeming High School. But what's truly amazing is that 40 or 50 years from now, the graduates of today will look back and say the very same thing. Yes, they will be living in that world where cars drive themselves, where we communicate with devices using some form of telepathy, where virtual reality is reality, and where people routinely live to be 150 years of age. Not sure we're ready for that. I'll be back in a minute. A couple of closing reminders before we go. First, if you missed the show or want to see it again, you can do that at uppermichigansource.com. Today's show will be available starting at about noon tomorrow. But our other reminder is that you don't have to miss the show because it's available as a live stream at that same internet address. That means you can watch it live and for a couple of hours later on your cell phone, your computer, or any device, no matter where you are. If you get a chance, check it out. Thanks to Tom Delaski for joining us this morning. He's doing some interesting things in Munising, and it was good to get an update. And thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning. And there we are. We can shake hands and say thanks for coming.